Welcome to the Red Ink Revival Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Norris. We're going to grow your leadership through neuroscience, psychology, and theology. Hey everybody, welcome again to the Red Ink Revival Leadership Podcast. You are listening or watching episode number 12. My name is Patrick Norris, and our goal today is to help you lead with a whole heart, a healthy brain, and a soul on fire. I'm so glad you're with us. Today's conversation in episode 12 is with my friends Rick and Christine Presley. Rick and Christine are licensed marriage and family therapists and leading experts in both addiction and compulsive behavior, as well as sexual addiction recovery. Christine specializes in partner betrayal trauma as well. Prior to their clinical work, they have served together in pastoral ministry for many years. Their story of addiction, pain, and ultimately having recovery has been featured on James Robinson's TV program, Life Today. On today's episode, we'll continue a conversation from episode number 8 on what is emotional regulation and why should we do it. Specifically today, we'll talk about how to emotionally regulate under stress. We'll give examples and provide tools so that even in the most stressful moments of life and leadership, you can calm the fight, flight, freeze circuits and lead from a whole heart. Both episode number 8 and this conversation is full of great takeaways that you can apply to your life right now. I can hardly wait for you to experience it. But first, I'm so glad to have you here with us wherever you're getting your podcast or the video version on YouTube. We do try to drop content every week, shooting for Thursdays of the month. If this podcast is adding value to your life and leadership, I'm asking for a big favor. Subscribe to the podcast, like it, comment in reviews. Help us get the word out by sharing on social media platforms. We would so appreciate it. Red Ink Revival platform is for all leaders in every sphere of leadership. I've been a pastor, though, for 30 plus years, and my leadership experiences happen in the context of church and ministry. So my stories are laden with church world experiences. The principles, they do cross-pollinate no matter where you lead. But if you're a pastor or a church staff member, you're going to love how we bring forward the things that have happened in a ministry context. Today's episode is brought to you in partnership with River Valley Conference and Marketing with Wisdom. River Valley Conference is an amazing pastor and church leader conference. I landed at one of their one-day events here in Kansas City and was really blown away. At River Valley Conference, hosted in Minneapolis, Minnesota, you're going to find a bunch of like-minded pastors and ministry leaders. The event is hosted by some top-tier leaders in Rob and Becca Ketterling, along with their River Valley church team. The conference takes place over 2 days to inspire and equip teams in building strong, thriving churches in their community. Dynamic speakers, powerful worship moments, and practical breakouts will inspire your team and bring insight and solutions to problems that you're facing. And here's a bonus. Red Ink Revival and our team will actually be at the conference facilitating a breakout. Come meet our team of psychologists and therapists. We'll all be there. We want to see you and your teams hold nothing back as you step into all that God has for you. River Valley Conference is June 8th and 9th, 2020. Go to rivervalleyconference.com, and for all of you Red Ink tribe, use discount code RED INK. It's one word, RED INK, for $10 off. I hope I get to see you there. Also, I want to let you know about Marketing with Wisdom. Wisdom Moon is absolutely the best. They're a full-service Christian marketing agency that works with churches, businesses, nonprofits, musicians, authors, podcasts, and a whole lot more. They are helping the Red Ink Revival brand get out into the world. So go check them out, marketingwithwisdom.com. And be sure to tell them Patrick Norris sent you. Let's go now to this week's episode number 12 in a continuation of episode 8 with my good friends Rick and Christine Presley. When we look at these various tactics or ways to regulate, I want to pull it back into a leadership environment. So let's say there is a leader, an executive of some sort, the number of things that can create flooding, emotional flooding in them. It could be a report of something that now then threatens the organization, financial reporting. It could be that a customer or a congregant is angry and is talking among the congregation, and the emotional flooding is their security with the organization. What do I need to do? But in those moments of flooding, how do we get back to a regulated state so that we can have our prefrontal cortex, our rational brain, to give us the options and the wisdom that we need? Sometimes as Christians, we just say, I believe I've got the mind of Christ. And I do believe that there is a help there.
Yeah, sure.
But if you're not allowing your neurobiological systems to reset or to come back to a regulation, it's going to be hard to live in that mind of Christ state. So how do we do this? How do we get regulated? What do we got to do?
Well, I think my first response to you is say we got to slow down.
Yeah.
Like slow the process down, because you might have a moment of miraculous Holy Spirit speaking through you as you're instantly responding to somebody. But I wonder how much more effective it would be if you slowed down, if you took a beat, if you took a walk, if you did something to get a break for a few hours or a few days even from that triggering scenario that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you got feedback from friends, or you really went into a time of prayer and allowed the Holy Spirit to speak to you, and you were listening.
Yeah.
Instead of talking and responding.
Yes.
I think that's my first reaction, is just slow the process down, to make sure that you're doing everything you can to get back to that emotional regulated state, to where you're not responding out of fear is not the driving motive, or anger is not the driving emotion. Now, that fear and anger may still be there, but it's ratcheted down to a level that now you're not hurting people.
Yeah.
You're not using words to control people. You're not using, actions that are going to be relationally problematic for you later on.
So it moves you from being controlled by the emotion. Now then it's informing you and motivating you in a healthy kind of way.
Yeah, I think it's also the react. So when we feel this powerless or this victim type mentality, we're going to react because we don't like that one down position.
Yes.
We can't stay there very long. And so we're going to be like, no, I got to respond. And so we're going to either, like you said, go to anger, or go to where we feel entitled even, that we're going to just I'm going to get this and I'm going to do it however because I deserve it, and I'm the pastor, or I'm the leader, or and then that's very damaging.
Yeah.
But if we can, instead of reacting, like Rick said, to slow down, find when that powerlessness, what is that? Where is that? And when we acknowledge that, it's easier to be able to respond instead of react. And we can respond just even understanding, oh my gosh, I am not powerless. I do have choice. I do have a voice. And I do want, identifying the things that we want. But Rick, right, slow down the process. So good. Slow
down the process. Which the more we speed up, which our lives often are living in the sped up chaos, we're just running from thing to thing. We're almost numb to any attunement of what's happening. And the faster we go, we have to create greater armor because we're not tuned in and we have to repress. So, we end up having masks that we wear and can't even hardly feel. When I think of this conversation, one of the things you guys keep coming back to is that before you can really even have a strategy to regulate, you've really got to be tuned in to your emotional states. And so is there more that you can help us to even figure that out? how do we know what's happening on the inside of us? Because again, when I put myself in moments, just recently I was on a phone call with somebody. They were wanting to not do some things that we had talked about them doing. And I just wanted clarity. That's it. I just wanted yes or no. That's it. And because they were feeling like they didn't want to be misunderstood by their own need to make some adjustments, which they needed to make the adjustments. But I felt powerless there. I felt out of control because I couldn't get to the yes or no. Mm-hmm. All I want is clarity. And I felt like so much was muddy and up around. And so something as simple as that created in me an embarrassing surge of emotion where then I wanted to power up, which I'm good at because I have a lifetime of it, to power up and to just start deciding things for everybody.
Yeah.
And so is there more that you can help us with in just being able to know what is going on the inside?
Well, the first thought I had was when we want to power up and we want to just do what we want to do, I think, first of all, we need to figure out what's going on, like you're saying, what's really going on. And again, slowing that down, asking questions like the HALTS questions: hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or stressed. Yeah. And if any of those are playing a part of that, which most often they are, then we need to address those and then revisit. Revisit the situation. Yeah. In the moment when we just respond, we'll have to repair. Yeah. But being able to own our part and let the other people own their part, and they may not be at the same place that we are, is really a hard. It's really hard. It's a really hard thing to navigate, and yet we can't make other people get to what we want them. Yeah. And so that's so frustrating. Your experiment or your experience right there was really frustrating. Yeah. And then we respond because it's just hard to in the moment. But then we have to just respond to that. Yeah. And we have to take ownership of
and repair.
I just really messed this up.
I know that with Tina, my wife, she these days, I'm getting better, a lot better, with her of being able to identify that I'm something she said, something that she's relating to me that has to do with the church or our kids or, futures. I've noticed when I'm getting triggered. And if I feel the flooding, it's, I kind of have a rating system. As it begins to climb, I begin to realize, you know what? I'm already past the level that I need to be, and so I'll just say to her, honey, right now, can we just hold hands, or can we just be present with each other? Yeah. And this is what I say to her because she geeks out with me. She allows me to geek out, and I'll say my amygdala is jumping all over the place. So let's just for a minute, just love me, just let me be present with you where I'm safe and. All of a sudden, we'll be able to come back to a good conversation around this.
I love that you're saying that. Because so can I turn the question back around on you? Yeah. Is to say how did you learn to cue into your emotions or your body? Yes. That is now informing you to kind of like I like to put things on a rating scale like a 0 to 10. 0 I'm calm, 10 I'm like in the most disturbance I could imagine or out of control. And what I think you're saying I'm getting up at like 6 or 7 and I need to do something to kind of re-regulate. But there's something you're cueing into that's telling you that. Yes. When did you learn that? How'd you learn that?
Well, part of it I learned from you guys and I learned from professionals that, and part of it's because I have motivation from pain. I have struggled my whole life with a codependent profile. And so in marriage, as an example, with Tina, if I feel, threatened, I have a tendency to power up and to verbally just set the world straight. And I don't yell, but I can talk her into, she doesn't, as she always says, I don't have as many words as you. but she doesn't back off of what she believes. And it's like, well, that's not fair. You gotta at least give me some words. And so what happens is I have hurt her. And for me, once I hurt her, and I know I hurt her because if I make her cry, and she doesn't even have to cry, but if I make her cry, I'm done. I move from making my point to now feeling like that there's nails shooting out of my skin, and I don't want any. I need to get away.
Yeah.
I need to get separate because I don't want to hurt you anymore.
Yeah.
I've hurt you, and I hate that feeling. I hate that experience. So and then I ruminate. So I feel like I hurt her, and Tina's extremely resilient. She will forgive me and reset in 30 seconds. Not me.
That's amazing.
After that happens, I go for another, sometimes it's a day or two before I can really be vulnerable. And she didn't, it's not because of what she did, it's because I hurt her. I have to work through that with me. And I do have to say today I can reset that much quicker because I understand what happened in my brain, and I began to manage it and move it around. So I have learned from you guys, particularly around picking up what's going on in your body.
Yeah.
And I can feel the blood flow to my head. It's right here in my cheeks. I can feel it when I'm angry.
Yeah.
And or when I feel threatened and misunderstood. And so as soon as I begin feeling it, it's like, whoa, and I'm still not great at it. But I am way better than what I used to be.
Yeah.
So
you're really talking about how you've cued into some of those physical sensations, and that is absolutely the first thing. If you'll just stop and take a body scan and take a assessment of your body always tells you the first how you're feeling. But many of us have just completely dissociated from our bodies. Like we're so not connected to the embodied feeling and the embodied experience of the world around us.
Which is actually the hypoarousal state. It's the disconnection. It's almost a disassociation from our body and being able to feel what's happening in our body.
So emotions, when we shut down, are from that dissociative state.
And we learn that as kids when we grow up in environments that does not foster emotional intelligence.
Interesting.
So
And it's a way of protection.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we learn it because we feel intense. When we're kids, like when we're babies, we feel what we feel. But we start to pick up on cues and nonverbal cues and verbal cues and whatever around us in the world around us that says this emotion is not something you can express. This, it's you need to calm down. You need to all these types of things. And when we're kids, we don't have language. We just have, a vocalization of a cry, or we have a physical expression of throwing a fit or something, because that's our language. And we start to pick up that that's not okay. Or, like Christina's saying, we are experiencing such a large amount of pain that it becomes intolerable, and so our brain shuts it off. And we dissociate from the physical experience of what's actually happening. And we kind of learn how to compartmentalize our physical feelings as separate from our mental and our processing. And so your body's always going to tell you first what's going on. Yeah. Like I use the simple example of when you walk into a room and somebody's standing behind the door and intentionally jumping out to scare you, what do you do first?
Yeah.
Your body reacts and you scream and you jump.
Great
and
example.
Then 2 seconds, not even 2 seconds later, you turn around and see who it is and what they're doing, and immediately your parasympathetic nervous system calms you down and says, no, they were just joking, and then you get back into your regulated state.
Yeah.
So your body always responds first. And the more you do those breathing exercises, the more you do that meditation, the more you do that devotion, and really focus on your body, what you're doing is you're teaching yourself a greater level of emotional intelligence.
Amazing.
Because you're learning from your body what you're feeling.
It's interesting because you can develop an overactive amygdala, fight, flight, freeze part of the brain. And if you've lived in a family of origin, if you've lived in a culture where that stress regulation is very, very strong. You have just a ton of predatorial stress, meaning that you just feel unsafe and you feel verbally attacked, or you feel you're going to be judged, criticized, whatever. And so, you do the story of the dude jumping out behind the door. I see people on like America's Family videos, and somebody will do something like that, and the person will see it, they'll jump back, and then they'll just laugh and laugh. Not me, man. You do that to me, and it takes me a lot of time to come back. You too.
I have a horrible startle response, which is a symptom of a lot of trauma. And so it fits right into what you're saying. It's like it takes a longer time to get back into that window of tolerance because of the trauma and the conditioning of the brain. And so the mindfulness, the meditation, the prayer, the grounding, the breathing exercises, all of that is retraining your body to come back into a centered type state.
So amazing.
Not to sound yoga-ish, but
well, so
like
let's pull it then into the leadership environment again. So something as simple as somebody giving you healthy feedback. Somebody giving you healthy feedback feels like the guy jumping out from behind the door.
Yes.
And as soon as they give you feedback, you're automatically power up. No, it's not what I planned. It's not what I'm thinking. And you can feel the blood flow into your cheeks. You can experience just flooding thoughts that are just circling around in your head. And then, give it a day, and you're like, you know what, that's a pretty good idea.
And on the opposite of that, being a leader, there has been times when I've gotten feedback as well. And for me, I'm a freezer, and so I shut down. And it's like, whoa, frozen, don't move, don't act like you're even alive. And eventually I will thaw out a little bit, and it's the same type of thing, but it's a different response of, I can't be seen. I don't want anybody to see me, because then if they do, then it's going to hurt even more.
Ooh, yeah.
So like the whole opossum metaphor that I used earlier, when an opossum senses a predator, they roll over and they play dead. And they actually, their heart stops, slows way, way, way down. Their breathing is very slow. And they have an appearance of death.
Yeah.
Until that predator leaves, and they still lay there for about 20 to 25 minutes.
Amazing.
So they are just in a death-like state until the threat of annihilation is completely gone. And so we call that that hypo freeze collapse state, almost like a death-like state, because our hearts slow down, and it's really a dangerous. If you stay in that for a long time, it's really dangerous.
Yeah.
And for a leader, either one of those responses can be super problematic.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because you're going to have to circle back around probably and fix something, because I've seen that happen in you, where you've had to circle back around and apologize for somebody's read of your hyperarousal being like, you're stuck up, or you are better than them, or you're not listening to them.
Because I'm frozen and I don't know how to respond in a a centered window of tolerance state.
Yeah. Which is so crazy, thinking about how we live out our lives from that emotional origin. It is a root system of emotions that we end up living out. Because even with repair, so, which we'll do this whole another segment on this sometime, but in repair, what is it that I'm actually doing? Because my amygdala can be so fired up in the codependent profile now, is that I feel like now they're going to leave my life. Now then they're going to abandon. And from that, the stress, the fear circuits are going crazy. So then I not over apologize, but emotionally, I overread and project on the person that no matter what I do, they're going to run. And I live in this torment.
Yeah.
So here, can I just say that this is so important to me, all you listeners out there. You're not going to get better as a leader by going, if these are your issues, you're not going to get it from a tactical, strategic podcast, a book on how to grow your business, or going to the next greatest church conference. This stuff is derailing so many of us, and we don't even know what's going on, and we can't figure out why some of the metrics that we've wanted to get are not being gotten. And yet, in fact, it comes back to we're emotional beings, and we grew up with a lot of dysfunction. So anyway, I wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah.
Red Ink Revival. Welcome to the house.
Yeah.
Well, can you guys just maybe share some of the unhealthy strategies that people tend to move towards for emotional regulation? Unhealthy strategies.
Yeah, so, we've talked about in other podcasts that a lot of the work we do is in addiction work. So that is certainly one. And there's a myriad of addictions that one can turn to as a way to soothe themselves. Sometimes the unhealthy relationship constructs of being, really like over codependent and living in that and operating out of that, or kind of the more selfish or maybe narcissistic kind of into that spectrum are ways that people cope a lot. Unhealthy coping strategies. What else would you add?
I think not addressing the root causes. As you said a minute ago, that we respond because what we're afraid of is rejection. We're afraid that people are going to leave us and walk away. That's why the hypoarousal response, it's the same. I think if I could just lay that out there, I think most people, their biggest fear is the fear of being abandoned and rejected, one of the two. And if we don't learn to go into address that in our life, and we're going to constantly be out of this comfort zone and not be able to be our best self.
Yes.
And be a reactionary state instead of a responsive state. And that it just doesn't work. So we try to empower over people. We try to just deny. We try to minimize. We try to blame. We try all of these things that...
All of that.
Not taking ownership. I mean, all of those things, and none of those things will get us really what we want, which is connection.
I want to invite you to one of our Red Ink Revival leadership retreats. Retreats are 40-hour plus intensive experiences led by psychotherapists, neuroscientists, and tenured pastors. These amazing intensives help pastors, staff, and marketplace leaders lead wholeheartedly in every sphere of life. Our retreats are profoundly helpful to you as you lead your organization. However, the most important person you will ever lead is you. Pastors and marketplace leaders struggle with the same emotional drivers. Statistics show that 70% of pastors struggle with depression and fear of inadequacy. 77% feel they do not have a good marriage. 90% are workaholics. 64% are engaged in secret activity around alcohol, drugs, and sexual behaviors. 84% wish they had a processed friendship that they could confide in, but grieve the fact that they don't have such a person. Today's leaders are painfully struggling with depression, isolation, anxiety, and panic attacks, and then powerlessly ruminating over what coulda, shoulda, woulda been. Then to right the ship, leaders tend to chase the illusion that a greater performance and a greater success will quiet the enemy in their souls. But performance, even if gained, measured, and celebrated, never quiets the soul. These ruminating emotional states gain momentum over days, months, and years, and give power to unmanageable behaviors like rage in marriage, avoidance as parents, or addictions like alcoholism, recreational drugs, pornography, or sexually acting out. For the spiritual leader, succumbing to one or more of these throws them into a firestorm of shame that ultimately keeps them in a cycle of bondage. Yet neurobiologically, we have learned that inordinate behavior is never about the ability to white-knuckle discipline through the temptation. The behavior is driven by emotional griefs, losses, and relationship injuries from our backstories. These emotional memories become embedded into our brain's neurocircuits. Until these memories are addressed and appropriately reprocessed, the struggler will continue to grow in the struggle until there comes the day of public discovery and painful disclosure. Red Ink retreats provide hands-on experiences in concepts, techniques, and coaching derived from theology, brain research, and psychological modalities. Our goal is to improve your individual leadership satisfaction, releasing a freedom for an energized life and a surprising greater performance. Go to redinkrevival.com and click the Retreats tab. You'll be inspired by previous retreat attenders, you'll hear their stories, and then you can dream of what could happen if you attended a retreat yourself. It might bring exponentially more fruitfulness to your organization. It might save your ministry, your marriage, your kids, and maybe even your self-respect. What is the value of leading wholeheartedly? So what are you waiting for? Go and register for our next retreat. Thank you for letting me share our Red Ink Retreats dream.
It's so interesting when you talk about that most people's fear is rejection or abandonment. Scripturally, it is fascinating to me that the Bible says the last enemy to be put underfoot is death. So now we have to ask the question, what is death? Many people have just use the idea of physical death. But if you go back to the Garden of Eden, when Adam and Eve were told not to eat, and the day you eat thereof, you will surely die, death means separation. Physical death is the separation of your spirit from your body.
Yeah.
It fundamentally is separation. When we think of physical death that way, what is spiritual death? Spiritual death that Jesus came to conquer is the separation that Adam and Eve first experienced in the Garden of Eden with God. And then, of course, it impacted each other. So the last enemy that's going to be put underfoot is the fear of death, and the Bible says that it has torment. So most people I know, if you're a Christian, most Christians, at least in the people that I hang with, death doesn't scare them. It's like, that's kind of like graduation. It's kind of like a party. It's like, it's not physical death that scares them. It is this intensity of isolation and aloneness and not belonging and being celebrated or being known and seen.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an interesting way to look at death. So let's kind of wrap this up with, again, when we talk about how to emotionally regulate, there are things like, just having a process friendship. A process friendship is different than a friendship in that a process friendship is somebody who understands the processing of what makes us emotionally do what we do. And they can lean in and meet us in that space. So just being around somebody, when a person is acting out in whatever addictive behavior that they've been acting out in, for there to be a relationship that I feel the rating of my stress rising, that I can just make contact with and just connect. There will be enough empathy and compassion and feelings in my heart of gratitude to them that the anterior cingulate cortex is giving the neurochemicals to calm my stress in that moment. And so what is so powerful to help me regulate is to have somebody to connect with who's going to love me. I think that's a big one. Exercising, hitting the gym, man, get some endorphins. And it has a way of calming the amygdala down. Writing in a journal. We know through neuroscience studies and stuff that happens in scans that if you'll sit down and just write a journal.
Handwrite, not type.
Handwrite.
Yep, we'll hit that.
Yeah.
Talk about that just for a minute.
Well, I don't know the science behind it. I just know that it is a big difference that when you actually journal using your handwriting or doodling or, that type of thing, it's a more creative, right-brained emotional experience than typing or typing on your phone or something like that. So it can,
So your thoughts are logical, so that's
Yep.
your left brain, and your creative handwriting is your right brain. And so that integration gives you, well, that's basically what it does. It integrates your left and your right brain. So yeah, you can type, but the more effective way to journal is to use your handwriting. It also slows down your brain. You can type faster than you can write, and so it allows that, what we talked about earlier, slowing the process down.
good.
Handwriting slows that process down as well.
When we move, because you're talking journaling, when we move to things like prayer, prayer can be effective or it can be hurtful. If the framework of your prayer is to appease a God who desires performance, it will increase the amygdala stress.
Right.
So rigid religion and fundamentalism, in the sense that God has to see you change something before he's going to have delight in you, that creates a negative reaction in the brain. But if you will go with the entire framework of, Lord, you love me, you like me, you're in a good mood, you're not waiting for another day,
Right.
you're not waiting for an expiration period of my disobedience, you're not waiting for anything before you're going to dance over me with celebrations. And right now, if I go into a prayer time where my goal is to have intimate connection, where I'm feeding on the love of God to me, that has a profound impact on the amygdala circuitry. And then worship music in that context. So for me, I don't even have to be worshiping. I don't even have to be in a mood to worship. What I know, if I just get, and this, I like Bethel music. I found a new group that I look on YouTube, and they just have one video after another that are like 10-minute long. I call them soaking worship moments, and they antiphonalize, or they have these spontaneous riffs, and that just being in that space, I'll just have it on. And the whole purpose is I know what's happening in my brain. I know that it's calming my amygdala. I know that it's creating for me dopamine from the pleasure centers of my brain because of what the anterior cingulate cortex is doing for me. And again, I use all those language pieces and name pieces in the brain because for me, I just don't like throwing stuff at the wall and hoping something sticks.
Yeah.
So when I find an absolute piece of my brain that will do this, and this is what I can do to give it the neurochemical results I want, that fires me up. And it works. I mean, massively.
Yeah.
So things like meditation.
Yeah.
What would maybe meditation, deep breathing, having a therapy session? Talk about, one or all of those.
Well, the meditation and deep breathing is, I found it to be, it's something that is I think a lot of Christians would be able to relate that whenever you're doing a devotional time, it's not always meaningful, but you do it anyways because it's a skill, it's a pattern.
It's like you're developing a muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. We're working out. It isn't always fun.
Yeah, right.
And some days are harder than others, but you get the result of it. So, sometimes I use an app called Calm that leads me through it. And there's days when I'm just totally scattered. I've got tons of things in my brain. I'm not really paying attention, but the whole point of it is to pay attention.
Yeah.
And I'm not.
Yeah.
But in those moments, doing meditation is noticing. It's not even just about doing the app for the day. It's about when you have days when your mind is wandering, noticing that your mind is wandering and not judging your mind for that, but following it and then refocusing.
That's interesting.
So it's just allowing yourself to notice what's going on, notice where your mind is going, and not condemning yourself, because then you're judging yourself. So you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And that fires up your stress chemicals.
Yes. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But just allowing yourself to notice when your mind is wandering.
It's amazing.
That is being in the repetitive action of doing it, is building that muscle, building the ability to do that.
Yeah. That's so good. So when you talk about deep breathing, what are you talking about? What's that even mean?
Well, I just took a deep breath right there, didn't I? It's slowing down. Like you cannot slow your heart rate down. You cannot slow your nervous system down. Your eyes, your skin temperature, your heart rate, your blood pressure, your eyes dilate. All these physical reactions start to happen when you get anxious, when you get stressed, when you get over exerted or whatever. You cannot slow all that down without breathing, without slowing your breathing down. So, or the adverse is actually more true. So when your heart rate goes up, your breathing goes up. So if you can force your breathing to slow down, you're going to slow all that down.
Yeah.
So taking a deep breath, and I do a 7 count. So I do 7 counts of in, slow 7 count, and then I hold it for 7 counts, and then I release it for 7 counts. So it's a very slow, because we normally, we'd breathe a whole lot more shallow breaths than that in a minute.
Yeah.
So it's even our Apple Watches will remind you throughout the day, take a deep breath.
Yeah, right.
Because it's being.
I turned mine off, but I should.
It is a bit annoying if you're not actually doing it, but there's just more and more and more research coming out about how important it is to breathe deeply, how important it is to slow down, how important it is to get oxygen into your system.
Yes.
And let it calm your nervous system down, let it calm your brain down.
Yeah. Absolutely. So now let's talk just a second about how do therapy sessions impact a person who wants to regulate emotionally?
If they come in completely dysregulated, doing deep breathing, doing grounding exercises first.
Yes.
And then that connection, I think, is vital. Like that 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 or however many people are in the room, but being able to be seen and heard and not judged, and just that human connection that alone can help regulate people.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
I say we're wounded in relationship experiences, and we have to be healed in relationship experiences.
Yeah.
So again, if I go back years and I hear you saying that there's something amazing about just being seen and known, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. And yet, neurobiologically, profoundly, in fact, there isn't anything that is more resetting, restoring than human-to-human contact,
Right.
where a therapist is you guys are artists. You have the ability to use tools that you've learned where you can make people feel about themselves what they could be feeling on their own, but they just never had the kind of developmental processes to get them there. So for you guys to actually be able to meet somebody without having to fix them, which often clients will come in probably thinking, you got to fix me. And it's like, well, first, we just need to make connections, because if we don't get your brain right, we will never be able to develop you. And that's, I think it's an incredibly important thing. Another thing would be getting good sleep. I know I read a book one time that said it's one of the most spiritual things, because when you're tired physically, you have a tendency to be irritable, say stupid stuff, etc. And so I read this book, and it said one of the most spiritual things you can do is to take a nap. So I shut the book and took a nap.
Amen.
And I'm like, man, that worked. But it is true. Sometimes just a good night's rest will get you. Dietary choices. I mean, I really don't like what I'm about to say, but it's true. You eat sugar, and sugar will neurobiologically impact you in a way that you have to now then overcome the stressor that it created. So again, that one's a big one. And then, as we talked about exercising, anything recreational, I know you guys like to go to Colorado, the mountains, and just to breathe in. And then we all love the beach.
And I want to say something about the beach. I was just thinking about that, and so I'm glad you brought it up. Christine's used the word grounding a few times, and I want to expound on that and say that what grounding is it's being present in the moment. So I was just thinking about the beach. When we go to the beach, what do? We sit at the beach and we notice the waves.
Yeah.
We sit in the cabin in the mountains and we notice the rocks and we notice the trees and we notice the birds and we notice everything that's happening right here, right now.
Yeah.
And what do we feel? We feel relaxed.
Yes.
We feel less anxious. Anxious is always about the future.
Yeah.
What's going to happen in the next minute? What's going to happen in the next day?
So good.
We can all do that. Go to Starbucks and just listen to every sound that's happening in the moment.
That's so good.
Like just absorb it. Just pay attention to what's happening right now,
So good.
and you'll get some of that same effect as if you're going to the mountains or the beach, because you're slowing your brain down. You're saying, I'm going to be present, and anxiety is about fearing the future, so I'm not going to fear the future. I'm just going to be here. So I'm just going to listen to Starbucks. I'm going to listen to the baristas talk to each other. I'm going to listen to the steam. I'm going to listen to the people talking.
So good. That's
Yeah.
so real. We all like beach therapy.
Amen.
There's
Yes,
yeah,
we do.
there's nothing better
I
than
mean,
that.
you think about it. I mean, for real, you're putting me in that mental space of when I'm at the beach, I like to go first thing in the morning before anybody else is doing anything. And I like to go sit at the beach because I get my feet in the sand, so my body's feeling it.
Yep.
I smell
Yes.
all the scents
Yes.
that are at the beach.
Right here.
Then I hear these waves
Yep.
coming in, and it has that whole, is a bilateral
yeah.
movement, and I'm hearing that come in. And it's doing something, actually, we know today it's doing something in my brain.
Right.
And then I'm watching this beautiful down at the area of Panama City Beach to Destin's my favorite spot. And the water is aqua, just emerald green, blue. And the beauty of that. And then I throw in some worship music. Are you kidding me?
That's great.
And it is. It's got such a healing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
a restorative part. I love that you equated all that with something we could do today. In for us in Kansas City.
Right.
When
right.
it's cold.
Right. Right.
So,
Well, I mean, that's exactly how I, teach people grounding is I do 4, 3, 2, 1. Name 4 things that you see. Like right now, you see, and then you describe them. What color, what shape, are they rough, are they tough, or whatever. And then 3 things that you hear. You just name them and you describe them, and it gets them out of their amygdala and their fight, flight, or freeze response into their prefrontal cortex, because, again, you cannot have that thought and also the fear or anxiety thought.
So
And then 2 things that you can touch, like you can feel this chair. It's hard, it's cold right here on the arms. You can feel your behind hit the seat. I mean, there's you just and describe that,
is so
and then
interesting.
I do one thing, and that they can affirm themselves. I am safe. I'm safe today. I have choice. I'm not powerless. I have responsibility.
I love that.
So that's my grounding exercise.
Well, right when you
I
said
do.
that, I'm
It's good.
like, especially when you said your seat, I'm like, I haven't felt my seat this entire conversation. But when you said that, I'm like, oh, I can feel my seat. I feel my seat.
Wiggle your toes in your shoes and
There
feel
you
your
go.
socks.
Right.
There you go. And I feel my socks are not is where they need to be. I can feel it just a little wrinkled up down there at my toes.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. And I just want to wrap this up with keying off of that idea, because when the amygdala is in the fight, flight, freeze mode, you're biologically in tunnel vision.
Yes.
And so it's almost like what you're doing is working your brain backwards now and saying, let's get you out of tunnel vision. It'll grab hold of the parts of your brain that are stressing, and you begin to kind of massage it just through backward work, which is, I'm not going to now be focused. I'm going to look at textures. I'm going to hear tones. I'm going to be able to see different variations in the color spectrum. I'm going to go into the deeper parts of what is to be experienced here. And it does. And when you think of God, isn't that the way he exists?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And isn't it the Sabbath, which is to rest? That the purpose of the Sabbath was to rest, and then this is how God said it, so that you can remember. In other words, you're supposed to go into a space where you're absorbing the deeper issues that begins to reset you for the upcoming week. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's good.
Anyway, guys, so good. Thank you guys. Can't wait for the next time we get to be together.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us today. You might be wondering, well, what's next? I want to encourage you to go to our website at redincrevival.com. There you're going to find our resources, retreats, upcoming special events, and a growing bank of content. We're trying our best to increase what is resource available to you. Just be patient with us as we grow and as we do put more content, but make a habit of going to check it out, because we believe that there will be things that will catalyze change in your leadership. Sign up for our free e-newsletter to stay abreast of all that's available, and when our newsletters begin to roll out, you'll already be on the list. Of specific note, we're hosting our next Red Ink Revival Leadership Retreats for pastors, spouses, church staff, and all other leaders very soon. And I hope everyone can make it to one of these life-changing events. The dates and more info is always at redincrevival.com. Well, everything that we're building is to resource you to be a wholehearted leader. I'd love for you to be a part of our tribe, and I can't wait till our next episode. I'm glad that you were with us. We can't wait to see you next time.